Next, we've come to our Friday feature movie spotlight, where our esteemed film critics give their recommendations on what to watch this weekend among the latest releases at the cinema and online. Joining me in the studio for that first, we have Jason Bechervaise. Jason, hello, it's good to see you.
Yeah, great to be here once again.
And we also have with us Darcy Paquet this week. Darcy, hello, it's great to see you too.
Yeah, good to be here.
Okay, so Jason, we begin with your recommendation this week, and this is one we here in Korea have been waiting for a long time. It is Celine Song's Past Lives. It has the same alliterated title in Korean. It's a romantic drama, and it's been nominated for Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay at the Oscars as well. So, Jason, what can you tell us about the film?
Yeah, so it premiered at the Sundance Film Festival last year, where it drew, significant critical acclaim. I actually remember as we were exiting the studio, actually talking about the film a year ago. We've been waiting for it for a while. It's written and directed by Celine Song, daughter of Korean director Song Neung-han. He made a few movies in the 1990s, including the widely admired Number 3, which is actually referenced in the movie, and he basically disappeared from the film industry and emigrated to Canada, Toronto. It's worth mentioning that because the film is kind of semi-autobiographical. It begins at a bar in New York where you've got a young Korean American stroke Canadian played by Greta Lee, who's with her husband, an American husband, and also her first love is in town, played by Teo Yoo. And then the film kind of flashbacks initially to the 1990s, where her family is moving from Korea to Canada. Her mother is an artist, her father is a director. And a 12-year-old Nayoung has to say goodbye to her best friend, Hae Sung. And then we basically follow her through different kind of chapters of her early 20s. So it kind of flashes forward to 12 years later, where she's in New York, and she actually discovers that Hae Sung has been trying to connect via social media, and they kind of basically interact with each other via Skype, and things are going really well, but then life gets in the way and they stop talking to each other. He moves to China, and then 12 more years passed. Nora's the name. She changed the name. She's now married, and Hae Sung finally comes to New York, and they talk about their past lives. So that's in it in a nutshell. But it premiered at it's Korean premiere actually. I wanted to see it in Busan but couldn't. It was at the Busan Film Festival, where it screened in a section that featured other films dealing with Korean diaspora, so Minari, Columbus, among others.
Right, so it's not a Korean film as such, but it is this part of this growing body of Korean diaspora cinema subgenre like Minari. As I mentioned, it's taken a while for the film to get its full theatrical release here in Korea. It was released in the US last June, if I'm not mistaken. So, Jason, was it worth the wait?
Yeah, it was. I'll be honest, I didn't like it as much as maybe some of the critics in North America did. But yeah, no, I did. The fact it's a feature debut. I mean, this is her first film. It's incredible. I mean, a third of the film is shot in Korea, and she, the cinematography is fantastic. The performances she gets out of a cast are just incredible, and so she's clearly very gifted. And yeah, the film is quite heavy in terms of its themes. It's talking about moving from one place to another, and how we have different chapters in our lives, and how they kind of maybe interact at some point, but at the same time they're kind of separate, And I was thinking as I watched the film, I grew up in England, and I moved to London, and then I came to Korea, and how are those kind of related, and how are they different, and so that film very much talks about that, but it's told from the perspective of a Korean American. So I don't think it's going to connect with audiences here in the same way that it would or has done in North America. But and so I think the Korean guy character is really interesting, because he comes across as really conservative, and I can see some people taking issue with that. But then it does create this interesting dynamic. She, the female protagonist in the film, she's very kind of independent, dynamic. She's quite an extrovert, whereas, you know, the Korean guy is more kind of introverted, like I said, conservative. So there's that, and I can see how that would, you know, resonate in America. And ultimately, yeah, you know, these stories are connecting. You know, America is, you know, after all, a population where there's significant number of immigrants. So I can see why it has resonated in the way it has done that.
Okay, interesting. So you think it might not play as well here in Korea. And you said it wasn't perhaps what you expected either. Perhaps were your expectations
Sky
too high? Because
Yeah.
there has been so much hype.
Sure,
And
that's
perhaps
the problem.
when people saw it first, there was so little expectation that people were surprised, on the other hand.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it is a really good film. You know, it's just that, you know, I came to it much later than many people did. And I was expecting, you know, like a masterpiece. And, you know, it's an incredibly impressive feature debut. There's no doubt how talented she is, both as a writer and as a director. So
Right.
it clearly runs in the family. Number 3 is an incredible film. And I love how it's referenced. It's called like Number 13 or something. Yeah. Where it's just going onto the Facebook page. But yeah, it's a great film. I love how it kind of moves between different locations. And yeah, you know, how they're, you know, walking through the city. I mean,
Sure.
clearly connecting to other movies. But yeah, it's solid and impressive.
Darcy, you've seen it as well, right? What did you think of it?
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, there's something really universal at the center of the film because, you know, it's about the experience of someone who, you know, had this close bond with someone when they were young, and then many, many years later, you get to meet them. And when you do that, you know, you're not sure whether the person standing in front of you is really the person that you knew then, or are they a different person? And then, you know, it's like, you know, they had this strong relationship in the past, but does that relationship mean anything in the future? And so it's a emotionally complex situation that I think a lot of people can connect with on a personal level. And certainly, I mean, if you listen to kind of interviews with the director, she says a lot of people have come up to her and talked about how it reminds them of their own personal experiences, even if they are not connected with Korea in any way. And yeah, I mean, I think that it is interesting to see the response in Korea because, again, you're kind of seeing it from the other side or the other perspective. And yeah, I guess it plays a little differently perhaps if Korea is kind of like an other culture or an unfamiliar culture perhaps. And one culture in the film is very familiar and then one culture is unfamiliar. I mean, for Jason and I, we're kind of very familiar with both.
Exactly, yeah. So
I see
it differently
Yeah.
compared to, you know, maybe critics in the States or the UK who have very little, you know, contact with Korea. So it just doesn't kind of...
Yeah, and language too, because I mean, for some people watching the film, like there's one language that they understand and then one that they'll read in subtitles. And if you know both languages, then I think you experience the film a little differently. I mean, language is one of the interesting things about the film because, you know, she grew up in Korea but then moved abroad, and, you know, it's been so long that she's not completely comfortable in Korean. And so the way that they interact with each other is interesting.
Well, it will be interesting to see the local reaction in the coming weeks. So that was Past Lives, out now in cinemas here in Korea. Darcy, let's continue on to your recommendation this week. And it's a film that won the top prize at last year's Venice Film Festival. And it's another key awards contender at the Oscars this weekend. It's called Poor Things. The title in Korean has been translated to 가여운 것들. Darcy, can you tell us more about it?
Yes. I mean, there's a lot to say about this film. I wasn't sure what to expect going in because it is like a very kind of strange film in a lot of ways. It's very grotesque. There's a lot of black humor, satirical. And, you know, sometimes I have a bad reaction to films that are kind of revel in their strangeness a little too much. But I mean, the film surprised me in a lot of ways. So, I mean, one thing to say about the film is that you have to kind of start with the director and the actress, I think, because, I mean, their collaboration is so interesting. And this isn't the first time that they've worked together. You know, it's the director, Yorgos Lanthimos, a Greek director who made a bunch of very strange and disturbing films in Greece before kind of moving to English language films. And so he's done The Lobster and The Killing of a Sacred Deer, The Favourite. And The Favourite was the first time he worked with Emma Stone. But they seem to have really kind of connected on some artistic level, and they're, they shot this movie Poor Things together. They did a short film together. They have another movie coming up that they've already shot. And it just does seem like one of these examples in film history where you get a great director and a great actor who bond and then start to work together quite intensely. So Emma Stone, she's given a lot of great performances. Everybody will be familiar with her from La La Land and everything else, but this is kind of her most dynamic performance ever, I think.
Interesting. And for those who are familiar with the director, they will know how weird and strange and unique his work can be, often quite hard to pin down a specific genre as well. What did you think of it? Did it work? Did it all come together?
Yeah, I really like the film, and it's it doesn't take place within a realistic world. It's based on a 1992 novel. It's kind of Victorian England, but it's kind of not, because the science is not the science we recognize. The landscape is not the landscape we recognize.
We should actually briefly say what it's about, actually, because we've not done that.
Yeah. So Willem Dafoe plays this surgeon named Godwin Baxter, or God for short, who's able to create these strange kind of Frankenstein-like creatures. Initially animals, he kind of grafts a pig's head onto a goose's body, and somehow this animal survives and becomes his pet. And at the beginning of the film, we see Emma Stone's character, and we don't really know exactly what her background is, but she is a kind of Frankenstein as well. And at first she has the speech and mental skills of an infant, but then she starts to develop quite rapidly. She has the body of a fully grown woman, and so it's sort of like a mind growing into the body. But she develops this ravenous desire to explore the world, and then this rakish lawyer shows up at their house, played by Mark Ruffalo, and he's so good in this. And he offers basically to kind of, elope with her, steal her out of the home, and at least, go off to Lisbon and have a good time. And so she sets off on this adventure with him. You've
been chuckling quite a bit, I think, through this.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it is quite amusing then, but is it good?
It is really good. It's better than I love The Favourite, and if you hated The Favourite, then you might not like this, but it's not for everybody, but I did really love it. I love the visual style because it's so unique, and it's exaggerated in a lot of ways, but incredibly creative in the way that it kind of envisions this world. The humor is really dark, and the movie's really raunchy as well. That might turn some people off too. But the approach to storytelling is unusual, and it doesn't only just feel like it's all for show, because running beneath the surface, it sort of seems to be asking the question of what is it to be human? And through this character, we see her developing, essentially from infancy up until adulthood, and we see her brain developing and her mind developing, and but she experiences everything there is to experience from a different perspective, and it gives you a lot to think about. So I'd really love to rewatch this film. People who rewatch it say that, the first time you're just trying to kind of orient yourself in this really strange world, but then the second time it's incredibly funny.
Jason, did you catch it as well? What did you make of it?
Oh yeah,
do you want to see it again as well?
I do. It's crazy. It's wonderfully eccentric, and Emma Stone is terrific. Well, all the actors are in the film. But yeah, no, it's a great film focusing on this female character and her exploration of sexuality and just growing up, and it's told in a way from her perspective, and I can see feminists really embracing this film, and rightly so, it's just like Darcy said, it gets you to think about what it is to be human, and these are things that are quite difficult to articulate. And I think she's, through her character and through as she develops, as she grows, or as her mind and her emotions grow, she's becoming more and more, well, she is more and more human or whatever, but it's and there is a sense of humor about it all as well. It's quite satirical. It's and the visual style of it's so artistic, and of course it's kind of outlandish, but at the same time it's like looking at a painting throughout the whole film. Like it's magical. Even the credits at the end of the film, I had to leave because I had to rush out, but I was like trying to stay as long as possible, because basically they throw all the credits like on these on a screen, and then it's constantly turning from one frame to another. And
Yeah,
then,
you get images all the way to the end.
Yeah,
so
it's
I was
great.
able to stay to the end of the credits.
Really interesting. I'm very intrigued to check this one out sometime as well. Okay, that is where we're going to wrap it up for our movie spotlight this week. Jason, Darcy, thank you for your recommendations as always, and we'll see you next time.
yeah, take care.
Yeah, bye-bye.